The first technique we're going to take a look at is type splicing. The idea behind this is that we're going to splice a piece of a letter, and with that splice, we're going to generate a symbol. And the thing to remember is that you don't want to distort the splice, otherwise it'll undermine the integrity of that shape to the rest of the typeface. And if you do distort it, it's okay to distort it if you're going to apply some type of a 3D effect, or if you want to distort it in a way so that it looks like it's being inflated or something. But you're not going to want to distort the shapes so that you get another shape out of it, because it's the same rule that applies to distorting regular type. You don't want to do it. The other thing you want to be mindful is of the hierarchy. Generally, you want the mark to be the most significant thing. In some cases, if you're working with a decorative typeface, the decorative typeface will obviously be just as visually impactful as the mark that you create, in which case you may consider using this technique rather in a way that you would be generating a logo type solution where one of the letters is actually being replaced by the mark that you generate. But it's always open for interpretation, and obviously you'll be the final judge to determine whether it works or not. So let's start off by making an outline of the text. So I'll select that, Command Shift O, and I'm going to grab my direct selection tool. I'll type in A, and I'm going to select the A. And I'll do a Command C for copy, and I'll do a Command V for paste. You generally want to do it that way because if you just select the letter and you hold the Option key down and make a copy of it and drag it over, whenever you select the letter, you're going to end up selecting the originals as well. But if you copy and paste it, you can select that by itself. So that's usually the way I like to set this up. So I usually copy it and paste it so that I have something to work with. So I'm going to focus on this teardrop finial, and I'll take everything else away. So I'm going to do a Command Y so we can see the type a little bit better. Go back to my direct selection tool. So here's where all the points are. So these two look like a good spot to generate the type of mark that I'm interested in. So I'll go ahead and select that with the direct selection tool. I'll delete those, and I'll delete those. And then I'm going to select this, select my rotation tool, and right out here I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to hold the Shift key down with the Option. So I make a copy, and then with the direct selection tool, I'll go ahead and let it snap to that point. Now if you want, you can just go ahead and call up a pathfinder and select both of these together, and then just call the Unite option. So we'll put those all together. And you may want to double check and make sure, click once here and try dragging that out. Make sure that you have a single point. If you don't have that, then you're going to have to average the points together so that it all locks in place. But since they're copies of the same points, it's going to work fine. Okay, so let me back away here, Command 0. I'll do a Command Y so we can see what we have. Now, a trick here, I'm planning on generating a spiral here. And a trick here that I'm going to work with is the idea of being able to come back and modify the rotation later. So what I'll do here is I'll select my shape that I just created, and I'm going to make it into a symbol. The shortcut key is F8, so if you do an F8, you have the option of either making it a movie clip or a graphic. And of course, these translate to animate. But for now, I'm just going to go to the window drop-down menu and slide down to Symbols. And I'm just going to drag the symbol into my Symbols palette. And I'll just go ahead and hit OK. All right, so what I want to do is rotate some copies of this. So I'll grab my rotation tool, and I'm going to click right about here. And I'm going to hold the Shift key down and hold the Option key down and make a copy. And now I'm going to repeat the last thing I did with the Command D option. And now I'm creating my mark. And that's one variation. I'm pretty much done with that. And I can come back and play around with color, and but people would be hard pressed to realize that it was the finial from the teardrop A that ended up showing up over here. As far as the distortion goes, you can tilt it. So if you're using the 3D tool or whatever, I actually have an example of that in another file. But what's interesting about the fact that it all was moved into symbols is now I can go inside. I'm just drilling into this symbol, and this symbol in here I can rotate, grab my rotation tool, and I can rotate that and come up with something that looks entirely different. And when I get out of the symbol, since these are instances of the same shape in different positions, they're all going to rotate exactly the same direction, and I end up with something like that. So you have some options in terms of how you render your mark. Then it's just a matter of placement. Here are some other variations that I used for the same technique. So here you can see I'm using the counterform inside the letter A to get these little teardrops. I also made a little flower out of it by rotating it. Here I did apply the 3D option, same shape, and here it looks okay distorted, but if it was distorted to modify the shape, that would look funky. Here you can see I'm using the same side of the A for this mark over here. The lower side of the T is here, just inverted and mirrored, here, here, and here. And here I'm just using a U with slight modifications to increase its size, and I'm playing around with the F. I wasn't terribly satisfied with these, but you get the idea of what you can do with it. I thought this was kind of fun, the way it turned out. Okay, so the next technique we're going to take a look at is creating marks with the brushes tool.